Hi everyone and welcome to this talk in which I would like to talk a bit about my understanding and also a bit about my experience about error handling techniques. I'm Diana Samboní. I work as a software Android engineer at Trivago. I've been working in Android for around 5 years and in software for around 8 in different sectors such as retail, banking, and travel industry in different roles. I really like design, the architecture, also team working and popcorn. I'm from Colombia and today I want to share with you my thoughts. So let's start saying that basically errors are inevitable. They are part of our life. We cannot get rid of them. But the important thing here is that we can handle them. And there's always going to be a way to handle them. And most importantly, we need to get the best out of them. So let's start saying why I'm here. So one day I saw a code like this that made me realize that we spend a lot of time talking about architecture, design patterns, solid principles, and how can we avoid boilerplate, all of these MBI, MVP patterns, and so on and so forth, but maybe we don't invest the same amount of time talking about errors. So that made me realize that, yeah, we never think about it. And also, we are losing data, important data, because in the end, we just don't care about it, or we just start handling errors when the user starts complaining on the Play Store, and that's not that cool, because errors contain important data. So, where this start? When I start programming, I start with Java. And I remember this try and catch. And that's why my first approach to error handling. So basically, it was that I was creating a function, and whenever something goes wrong, I just throw an exception. This check it, an unchecked exception from Java, and whenever we have to handle any function or we are consuming an API, we just have this beautiful nested cache because we may have a lot of different exceptions, so null pointer exception and so on and so on. But the problem with this is that we actually should know what kind of exceptions are we expecting, and what if we don't know all of them? So maybe we're going to forget to handle it, and yeah, we're going to have an error in the end. Or the worst part, we just catch a general exception and add a comment like do nothing, or yeah, that was our first approach, at least mine. I think that the problem is because we never think about what's an error in reality. So error, as I mentioned, it's something that it's part of our life. We cannot get rid of them because software may fail, the user can input wrong data, internet connection might fail everywhere, and also maybe some error edge cases that we might forget to cover, and even worse, we can have something like that. So if you have worked with GraphQL, maybe you had received 200 response, but in the end it was an error. So what's an error? It's something that we are going to receive. And yeah, I mean that maybe it's something that we want to receive. In the end, an error is just as important as the happy path. Why? Because this is part of our code. It just means or represents the alternative use cases that we can have inside our app, because something can be wrong. An error doesn't imply that something went wrong, because actually we can also have these domain errors which represent something in our business. We can also have different error types, and now that we have all of this clean architecture, we can also have errors in different layers, which means different things that we have to map in different ways. But the point is that they are very difficult to reproduce. We have to use shards, or we have to mock or hard code, and it's too much work. So maybe we are very optimistic people that just think that everything is going to be perfect, and also we work in this agile world in in where we need to deliver faster every time. So maybe we don't have enough time for handling errors. And basically, we just focus on building functions. But that functions can throw exceptions. And what is a function that throws exceptions? So basically, as we mentioned, an exception, it's just an alternative use case. It's something that went in a different way, that it's not the main core, it's not the core of our app, it's something else. So it's not the ideal response, and let's call it a side effect. So if we think about like a functional programming that it's very trendy now, what is a function that throws an exception? It's basically an impure function. It's not going to be pure because we are going to have different results every time. And I want to ask you, does anyone know how can we turn an impure function in a pure function? Any clue? Okay, well, basically, that's something called monads. I'm not a math expert, so I just want to simplify this concept as I understand it and as it works for me. So basically, a monad, what is a monad? It's this mathematical thing and theory, and also it's like a functional programming approach or this type pattern, but in the end, it's something that acts as a container that makes our side effect part of the response. So then we can have just one response. So if we think about Kotlin, what can we use that can act as a container for defining the success and the error type? So maybe we can think about sealed classes. So this is one approach that we can use. So I've seen this through GitHub. We just define a sealed class in which we define a success and a result and an error. And there we're just grabbing and encapsulating our results. So whenever we want to consume an API and a function that returns a result, we're just going to have this when in which we extract either the response or the error. But what happens if we want to operate over the response? Or maybe if we have many layers, we don't want to handle the error there because it's already mapped, let's say. So we will still have to unwrap the result, operate over it, and then wrap it again. And here it comes another concept or attribute about monad. So a monad, it's not only a container. It also gives us the possibility to compose functions. That's where the functional programming came. And also now we have all of these approaches with Kotlin Flow, RxJava, in which we want to compose and have this stream. So here we have a couple of data types that I will explain that we can use for that. The first one, let's say for a brief introduction, it's the optional. Basically, it's something that means that some value can be optional, can be either there or not. So basically, it only defines that something value can exist or it's going to be empty. It would look something like this. So I was just using general code. We can just return an optional, define what kind of optional will be. And if we don't have any error, we are going to return an empty result. When we are using it, we can just compose functions, defining default value, and so on and so on. But the problem with this is that we don't know what happened. We just know that it's not there, but we want to know what's going on. So I wouldn't suggest to use the optional for handling errors unless you really don't care the reason why you don't get something. A use case for that can be whenever we are working with cache. So I just want to get the cache value. And if I don't have it, yeah, I really don't care. I just go to the backend and get the new value. So maybe in that case, but not really for error handling because, yeah, I don't know what is going on. So basically, what if I need more data? What if I want to know what's going on? So there's another data type. It's called either, in which basically I can define two types. One, it's usually used for the error, it's the left side, and the right side for the success response. So whenever I want to use it, basically I return something like that. I define the right response with the result, the success result, and the left side with the error. And here we can see that an error doesn't always mean that something went wrong. Here in this case, I just want to get the email, and if it's not a corporative one, it's going to be an error because this is something that we define in our business layer. So basically, when I'm using it, I can just define if I want to work on the left side or on the right side, but that's a problem, let's say, because what if we don't have enough experience, or we have this lack of communication inside our team? There's not a proper or forced way to know which side is going to be the error or the success response. Also, what if we want to have throwables? Yeah, it's going to be a bit more complex, but that sounds pretty much something that we can need, and it's so much better than the try and catch approach. And how can we implement it? So of course we can do it by ourselves, but there's something cool called Arrow, so we can just use a third library called Arrow, which contains a lot of things about functional programming, and it's really cool to use. But what if we work developing a library and we don't want to depend on other library, or we don't have a team that knows that much about functional programming? Maybe we can use Kotlin result. So this is the last one that I want to talk about. This only handles a type of value, which means that the error is going to always be a throwable. That can be a good part or a bad part according to whatever you are looking for, but it handles internally everything related to the how to handle the success and error things. So it will have really cool extension functions, let's say, to just provide if the function was successful or error. But a bad part also can be that the error has to be always a throwable. So maybe if you want to force your team to use a custom error type, it's not going to be possible. Also, sometimes we don't want to prepare a throwable because it's going to stop our flow. But a good part is that it's already included in the Kotlin package. We don't need to add any additional library or including anything else. So it looks pretty much the same as the either. But it's more descriptive because we are going to say, hey, the success is this, the error is that, and yeah, basically we can set whatever kind of message there, and also we can create, of course, our custom classes that should extend from throwable for the case of the error. Whenever I'm using it, we can use vertical functions as default, in which I just send as a 2 lambdas the values that I'm going to use. So in the end, you may ask, which one should I use? And as you're going to listen, it depends. It depends because, yeah, we have so many different factors that can affect the software. So it will depend on your team seniority, on your app complexity, on what are you looking for, on how many layers do you have, how many time also do you have to invest on. So I will just give you some of the things that I think that it's important to consider when choosing handling error strategy. So basically, for me, a seal class can be helpful when our app is small, when we don't have that much layers, so then we don't have to unwrap or grab the data again, when we don't have to operate over the data. That should be enough. Arrow, it's also cool when you have a more functional-oriented architecture because it brings you more stuff, but also I will recommend it when you have a team with a high seniority. And also when you are not developing any that's going to be external, something that I don't know, maybe a library. And the Kotlin result for me, it's like at this balance between both. It's like the best of both works. So basically, this is really good when we just want to have like a faster approach, let's say. But also keep in mind that we cannot force to use our custom classes, and also that maybe the observable pattern flow might get broken at some point. So I will share also some thoughts about stuff. And first, communication is clue, because it doesn't matter the technique that you're using. The most important thing here is that you should communicate that with your team, and everyone should start using like the same technique, because otherwise it's going to get mad. Also, it's really important to use a logger. Why? Because it's going to be easier then to debug an error. So if someone starts complaining, if we have a bug, if QA reports any random thing, it's easier to look the logs and understand what was the error there. Also, it's really important that when we are modeling the response, we also think about the error and we model the error. So it's really important to put the same before modeling our business ideal result and also the error. And and the last thing is that remember that something that an error, it's not always that the internet connection fails or something like that. It's just also it's maybe a business definition. What if I'm getting the list of something and the list is empty? Maybe that means an error. So the most important here is that no matter how, please always handle the exceptions. Thank you.